Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Environment and Housing. Welcome to this press briefing on the activities of the Ministry during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of the Environment and Housing has a diverse portfolio and includes the Department of Environmental Health Services, the Bahamas Geographical Information Systems Center, BINGUS, the Department of Housing, the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, formerly the BESS Commission, the Forestry Unit, the Public Parks and Public Beaches Authority, and the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation. Most of these departments provide critical services which had to continue during the lockdown. These are services that we take for granted, but teams of hard-working persons had to produce them. The pandemic has changed our lives in ways that could never have been imagined. I never thought that a face mask, which up to the beginning of this year was associated with either criminals or doctors doing surgery, would be a part of my regular work attire, similar to wearing a necktie or a jacket. I now invite the Honorable Ramon Ferreira, the Minister of the Environment and Housing, to provide an update on what transpired and what continues to be done at the Ministry.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc on the lives of all Bahamians. Large numbers of fellow citizens have been displaced, laid off, furloughed, or terminated. These persons have suffered a lot. The past 6 months have changed the Bahamas and changed the world in ways that just could not have been imagined at the beginning of the year. What makes this pandemic so insidious, so terrible, is that it prevents us from expressing the things that make us human, our own humanity. To touch a loved one, to offer a hug, to be there for them if they're hospitalized. I know many of you have lost loved ones. For this, I offer my sincere condolences. To the heroes on the front lines, putting your lives at risk for the greater good of us all, we thank you. And we recognize that in our nation's darkest hour, when our nation needed you the most, you answered the call. I assure all Bahamians that we care about you and your families. We are here for you. I'm reminded of a scripture verse taken from 1 John 3:17. If anyone with material possessions sees his brother or sister in need, but has no compassion on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Indeed, these are powerful words, especially at a time like this. Yes, fellow Bahamians, we are our brother's keeper. And it is very easy to take care of certain types of services, such as garbage collection and cleaning of roads, and to take these services for granted. However, can you imagine what Nassau, New Providence would look like if these services were not provided for, even for a few weeks? These services had to continue during the lockdown. And at this point, I commend the staff at the Ministry of Environment and Housing, the Department of Environmental Health Services, the newly established Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, formerly the BESS Commission, the Department of Housing, the Forestry Unit, Bahamas National Geographic Information Systems Center, the Public Parks and Beaches Authority, and of course the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, for their hard work during these difficult times. Many members of staff put themselves at risk to ensure that essential services were provided for. I applaud them and I thank them. The Ministry of Environment and Housing is located on the second floor of Charlotte House. The staff began working from home on the 20th of March 2020, following the announcement by the Prime Minister the night before. A gradual reopening started on the 4th of May with a shift system, which was in compliance with all the health protocols. The biggest challenge was at the Department of Environmental Health Services, and this is due largely in part to the large number of staff and the requirement for social distancing at the ministry. The Department of Housing, the Bahamas National Geographic Information Services Center, the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, and the Public Parks and Beaches Authority had plexiglass barriers installed at critical areas and strategic locations, such as the front desk and the registry, all as an effort to protect my coworkers. I begin with the Bahamas National Geographic Information Systems Center, which we refer to as BENGIS. The BENGIS Center is the government's technical focal point for geographic information systems, and it is the central repository for the collection, analysis, and management of geospatial data on the Bahamas. The center provides GIS training and technical support and has the remit to develop GIS policy and standards and procedures. Having said that, before I go any further, I congratulate Ms. Caroline Albury, the director, on her retirement from the public service, having faithfully served for 39 years. Director Albury, thank you so much for your years of service to your country. And I think that I would be remiss if I didn't take note of the fact that Ms. Albury has been with the BENGIS Center since its establishment in 2014, and of course for many years prior to that. As with many government agencies and businesses, the staff at BENGIS worked remotely during the lockdown. During the early days of the pandemic, the BENGIS Center became an integral part of the Ministry of Health Surveillance Unit and Call Center, providing invaluable assistance in mapping COVID-19 confirmed cases and tracing contacts on all impacted islands, including New Providence, Grand Bahama, Bimini, Eleuthera, Exuma, Cat Island, San Salvador, and Abaco. This service was especially important on New Providence, as it helped identify areas of infection and the number of cases in those areas. BENGIS mapped bus routes and bus stations on New Providence, and this was done in collaboration with the Ministries of Works and Transport, and created population density maps for New Providence, which was submitted as a part of the COVID-19 progress reports to the Ministry of Health. In addition to this, the work of the center had to continue. BENGIS was able to secure consultancy services for improvements to the existing spatial data infrastructure portal for agency-wide use. This will yield not only hazard maps, data collection of existing land use, but also assist in modeling for storm surge scenarios in real time, and of course, training for governmental agencies. All of this very technical, however critical work is done by the BENGIS Center. Having digital access to maps of the country has many benefits, including assisting the government with plans for development, helping predict population density and zoning requirements, and of course, managing the global pandemic known as COVID-19. I turn my attention now to the Parks and Beaches Authority. This agency is very familiar to many of you, and it's located within the Ministry of Environment and Housing. And its work is very important. It provides for the beautification and cleaning of New Providence, but more importantly, it provides jobs for many hundreds of persons who would have been unemployed due to the pandemic. The chairman and his executive team has done an outstanding job with the small cadre of staff in the authority, and I congratulate them. I turn now to the Department of Housing. The Department of Housing provides a number of essential services which continued during the lockdown. These included oversight of various government rental units on New Providence and responding to calls for assistance. The rental unit has a small staff with 2 building inspectors and 1 clerk who worked responding to calls. At the beginning of the budget period, the Department of Housing had 19 vacant rental units, which required renovations at an estimated cost of $35,000. To date, the Department of Housing has repaired 2 of those units, which are now occupied. Funding has been requested to repair the other units, and a major repair project has been undertaken to fix the roof of the Windsor Park building. This work is well underway. Repairs will include the ceiling in the apartments where it was damaged. Most of the units are aging and require repairs. The subdivision development unit is actively involved with the development and opening of the Carmichael Village subdivision in western New Providence. I am pleased to report that the tendering process for the civil infrastructure has been completed, and we seek final approval before we make any appointments. This contract will be for the installation of the sewerage system, water supply, storm drainage, and of course, construction of the roads. The subdivision consists of 365 lots divided into 4 phases. The initial development will be phase 1, and it will commence with 107 lots. The second part of the infrastructure is for the installation of the electrical works, and this is currently out to tender. Not to be forgotten, in the Family Islands, the Department of Housing is developing 21 lots in Spring City, Abaco, with the aim to construct 21 townhouse-style duplex units. The tendering process for surveying the 21 lots is complete, and a contract has been signed to survey the lots. The tendering process to select an engineering company to manage the civil works at the subdivision has also been completed. On Grand Bahama, Cabinet has given approval for the Department of Housing to sell its stock of unfinished homes in the Bahama replat subdivision at a cost of $110,000, which is the appraised value. The Department of Housing established a collections section with the responsibility for collecting revenue from individuals squatting on government properties who have entered into a land lease agreement with the ministry. In addition, this section is responsible for monitoring those properties to ensure that no illegal buildings are constructed and that there is no additional squatting. The Department of Housing proposes for the future the development of a 1.3-acre tract of land in the Yellow Elder community next to the community center. This will be, or is intended, for the construction of 4 duplex units for senior citizens. The Department of Housing is considering plans to construct new rental complexes in the over-the-hill community of New Providence. These plans will be developed with the over-the-hill unit at the Office of the Prime Minister. I turn now to the Forestry Unit. The Forestry Unit has a number of exciting initiatives on which it is actively and has been actively working. I regret that it was necessary to cancel the annual National Forestry Week, which was scheduled during the time of the lockdown in March. I particularly enjoy participating in the events. More so, I particularly enjoy visiting the various schools to interact with the students. The purpose of the National Forestry Week is to make Bahamians of all ages aware of the importance of forests in the Bahamian ecosystem. The Forestry Unit has partnered with and received grant funding from the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, in the United Kingdom. And this is in relation to a global tree seed project. This affords the Bahamas the opportunity to establish its own seed bank. This project is especially significant when one takes into account the urgent need to preserve rare genetic varieties as they face threats of extinction due to climate change and other factors. Staff have collected seeds from Bahamian species and sent them to the Royal Botanic Gardens for preservation. In January 2020, the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance launched a regional project to plant 1 million trees in the Caribbean. And this is to be done by the 5th of June, 2021. This is led by the Organization to Combat Climate Change. The Bahamas has pledged 100,000 trees in support of this regional project. The Forestry Unit discussed opportunities to partner with this initiative. Their core objectives include highlighting the Sustainable Development Goals 13 and 15. Other national partners include the Bahamas National Trust, community associations, public and private schools. The official launch was in March 2020 at Queen's College, where the national patron, the First Lady, Mrs. Patricia Minnis, and myself planted the inaugural tree. The Forestry Unit is a partner with the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance Caribbean Tree Planting Project at formulating a plan to galvanize volunteers on 10 family islands to develop starter packages for the planting of trees during the summer months. Plants will be shipped out to the islands beginning this month. In 2019, Hurricane Dorian catastrophically impacted the forest resources in central Abaco, Marsh Harbor to Treasure Key, and East Grand Bahama, destroying the pine forest in particular. To restore the ecosystem, salvaging the damaged trees and dead pine trees was identified as appropriate forest management intervention. Requests for proposals were advertised for both islands, and companies who responded were subject to evaluation. The New Providence Ecology Park Limited met the basic requirements, hence the RFP and project proposal for salvage on Abaco. Cabinet agreed to a 3-year salvage license for the company to harvest damaged and dead pine trees on Abaco for commercial purposes. The Office of Attorney General has vetted the draft license. The company is currently preparing an environmental monitoring plan, which will be subject to review and submitted to the newly created Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. On Grand Bahama, a group of Bahamian business persons formed the Bahamas Forestry Cooperative Society in collaboration with the Department of Cooperatives. The society was provided the RFP and prepared a project proposal to salvage the damaged and dead pine trees on Grand Bahama. Cabinet approved a 3-year pine salvage license to the society for commercial forestry purposes. The company is currently preparing an environmental management plan, which will also be submitted to and subject to the review of the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. The Office of the Attorney General has finalized the drafting of the Protected Tree Order of the Forestry Act 2010. The new order will dramatically increase the number of protected trees from 12 to over 100. These additional trees are considered endangered, endemic, threatened, and of course of economic, cultural, and historic value, based on the IUCD red listings of species and their status in situ in the Bahamas. Once this order is signed, it will be forwarded to my colleagues, tabled in the House of Assembly, and published in the Gazette. Turn my attention now to the activities during the COVID-19 pandemic of the Department of Environmental Health Services. First, disinfection. During the initial month of lockdown, the Department of Environmental Health Services conducted daily washing and disinfection of building exteriors, streets, and sidewalks. Disinfection solution was provided gratis by Blanco Chemicals Limited, and we thank you for your kind generosity. This activity targeted places where there were large gatherings and included food stores, banks, and the like. The Department of Environmental Health Services also conducted disinfections using aerosol viricide in all areas of New Providence. The department was responsible for deep cleaning and disinfection of a number of government offices. A total of 46 deep cleaning and disinfection exercises have been conducted. These include properties in New Providence and the Family Islands. The Department of Environmental Health Services produced a guidance document for cleaning and disinfection for use of government agencies. Additionally, The Department of Environmental Health Services conducted training sessions for custodial staff of schools and private companies, government agencies, and cleaning companies. In total, 64 cleaning companies, 18 government agencies, 9 schools, and 5 private companies received training. Government agencies trained includes the Office of the Attorney General, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Public Service, and the Ministry of Works. The Department of Environmental Health Services also collaborated with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education on guidance documents for the reopening of offices and schools. The Department of Environmental Health Services has been mandated to ensure effective implementation of the preschool COVID-19 mitigation prevention checklist. The Department of Environmental Health provides technical input and is the executing and enforcement agency for the Ministry of Health's COVID-19 workplace guidelines. The department has required that business license applicants demonstrate compliance to these workplace guidelines as a prerequisite to DHS approval. In terms of waste collection, the Department of Environmental Health Services staff maintained its monitoring activities of the 63 residential collection zones. During the period of lockdown, the DHS contractors responsible for residential waste collection maintained the twice-per-week collection, and I congratulate them for it. Albeit there were some delays experienced, which is to be expected given what we were faced, all in all, it was a smooth experience. The Department of Environmental Health Services also collected waste from the quarantine facilities daily. DHS staff also continued to monitor the receipt of banned plastics at the waste disposal facility at the New Providence landfill. 3,101 cases of banned plastic products were received and dealt with. Vector control. Ground fogging activities for the control of adult mosquitoes was conducted in New Providence, Grand Bahama, Exuma, Inagua, Andros, Crooked Island, Abaco Mayaguana, and New Providence. Larviciding of standing water and ponds was conducted throughout New Providence in July and August using liquid abate and Altocid briquettes. Remote training of vector control staff on the Family Islands was carried out during July and August. The training was specifically related to the ULV ultra-low volume equipment utilized in ground fogging. The DHS continued its monitoring of the Aedes aegypti mosquito patterns in Adelaide, Mount Pleasant, and Misty Gardens as a part of the Sterile Insect Technique project with the International Atomic Energy Agency. The DHS continued work at Arawak Key and Junkanoo Beach with respect to rodent control. The DHS conducted 5 rodent treatments as a result of complaints received. The rodenticide distribution program was fully maintained during the period of the lockdown. Turning now to our cane toad project. From June 19th through to July 21st, 2020, staff of DHS, in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, and the Bahamas National Trust, conducted a cane toad assessment and removal exercise in the Western District of New Providence. A total of 392 cane toads were extracted and they were euthanized. In terms of port health, the unit maintained a half-day work schedule to ensure that duties related to ship sanitation, condemnations, and meat inspection were conducted. 5 ship sanitation inspections and 6 condemnations were conducted. Inspections of imported meats were conducted daily. Also during the lockdown period, the derelict vehicle removal program continued. A total of 667 vehicles were identified for removal from private and public spaces. 645 were removed. The remaining 23 vehicles require further action or court submissions, or they went to court and there was some sort of extension granted. But you can rest assured that the prosecution's unit is moving those forward. Removals were made from Centerville, St. Barnabas, Nassau Village, Fort Charlotte, South Beach, Annestown, Carmichael, Killarney, Engliston, and we can provide statistics for the individualized statistics for the debris, for the derelict vehicle removal. In terms of complaints, a total of 227 complaints were received. 106 were investigated, and 104 public health orders were served. In relation to building control, a total of 359 applications were received during the period. 370 were approved, and 43 returned with queries. 72 requests were received for occupancy certificates. All were approved. 27 requests were made for hurricane shelter inspections. 22 were inspected, and 21 were approved. During the lockdown, the accounts area remained functional, but some staff were equipped to work remotely. In the human resources portion, the staff continued to work on the file audit. Other activities of the Department of Environmental Health Services conducted during the COVID-19 lockdown included the cleaning and maintenance of clinic grounds in New Providence, South Beach, inclusive of the post office compound, Adelaide, Gambier, Flamingo Gardens, Elizabeth Estates, with the assistance of the Beaches and Parks Authority, and of course, Annestown. The first phase of the Enviro app was completed, and this will allow the public to electronically forward complaints in relation to the Department of Environmental Health Services by virtue of downloading an app on their phone. More particularly, complaints in relation to derelict vehicles, garbage collection, littering, and of course, other environmental infractions will be able to be conducted from the convenience of a phone app that they can download. We intend to have this available for widespread use before the end of the year. The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, at the beginning of the pandemic, at the very beginning, the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, well, they initiated a program to assist all of their clients. The BMC, as we call it, recognized that many of its clients were being temporarily or permanently laid off as the country was on lockdown and we were closing our borders. BMC launched its Deferral Campaign by deferring the client's mortgage payments. The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation offered a 6-month payment waiver, 6 months. This plan assisted many persons who were directly or indirectly affected by the layoffs. However, with the expiration of the initial 6 months, the corporation has begun to reach out to all of its clients, all of them, who were impacted by the layoffs or who were working reduced days a week. These clients are asked to please contact the corporation and speak with us. We're there to help you. We want to be of service to you. Our aim is to keep you in your homes. When the corporation resumed operations, new operating procedures were introduced to comply with the government guidelines. The procedure for receiving and processing mortgage applications was redesigned to process requests electronically. Payment options were made available through the Bank of the Bahamas, First Caribbean Bank, and the Royal Bank of Canada. These changes have been effective in minimizing in-person traffic and contact. The continued repair and recovery programs on Abaco and Grand Bahama were negatively impacted by the lockdowns. These closures have caused significant delays to the timely completion of work on clients' homes. All BMC offices in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Abaco had this challenge. I think that I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation on the completion of renovations of its new headquarters at the old Ministry of Foreign Affairs building on East Hill Street. The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation is moving to occupy this new building, and we look forward to celebrating with them. I turn my attention now to the activities of the Climate Change Unit during the lockdown. The first, legislation. The Climate Change Unit was formed in 2019 in the wake of Hurricane Dorian. It is headed by Dr. Rihanna Neely Murphy, and it is comprised further of 3 environmental officers. The unit has been integral in the drafting of the suite of environmental legislation passed in 2019. The implementation of renewable energy and energy efficiency or energy efficient installations on several government buildings, and the rollout of the 2020 selected single-use plastic ban, and coordinating various international and national initiatives on climate change. Below is an overview of most of the unit's recent undertakings. First, the legislation. Over the last 6 months, officers within the unit have spent a considerable amount of time working on the environmental impact assessment regulations, working with the Law Reform Commission. Several virtual meetings were held to bring the draft to a place for internal government and public consultation. Through this initiative and this iterative process, comments from internal government agencies and the public sector were included in the regulations, which were tabled in the House of Assembly by myself on the 16th of September 2020. Next up, the social media element. The unit established Facebook and Instagram social media pages as a means of increasing communication channels with the general public, and keeping them abreast and appraised of what we're up to. Since the expiration of the marketing contract, the unit had with Blue Orchid in March, the unit has stepped up its campaign and, working in association with the DHS and the Department of Housing, agreed to create content to answer queries and questions as they relate to these agencies, in addition to general Ministry of Environment inquiries. Our Facebook page is the Ministry of Environment and Housing. Our Instagram is MOEH242. Our social media hashtags are hashtag MOEH242 or hashtag MOEH. Our single-use plastics and styrofoam ban 2020, which was a part of the environmental legislative suite that we introduced, at the beginning of the nationwide shutdown in March 2020, the first phase, the very first phase of the ban was in place. It saw the prohibition of imports on the forbidden 4: single-use plastic bags, plastic straws, plastic utensils, and styrofoam cups and food containers. It also introduced a bag fee for plastic bags at the point of sale, and it made it illegal to release balloons into the atmosphere, because when you release a balloon into the atmosphere, it does not go to heaven, it lands in the ocean. Since then, the unit has continued enforcement of the full ban once it came into effect on the 1st of July 2020. With the assistance of DEHS officers, the unit has also continued the public education and outreach campaign to reach those islands that were not included prior to the shutdown, both physically and virtually. Having received the form of notice books shortly after the initial opening, officers have once again taken to the streets, inspecting businesses for breaches. During the first weeks of July, the unit increased its presence across all media outlets again, reminding all Bahamians of the pending deadline to remain in compliance with the new law. It also oversaw the drop-off of thousands of single-use plastic bags and other banned items from across the country. In terms of renewable energy, recognizing the impacts of climate change will have on the Bahamas and the current challenges that exist locally with energy generation and distribution, the ministry placed special attention on identifying opportunities to increase and introduce renewable energy into the public sector. The unit has the primary responsibility of ensuring these projects come to fruition. To this end, the unit has been and is currently working with the Rocky Mountain Institute and Bahamas Power and Light to identify land and property for government-owned renewable energy installations, as well as to conduct energy audits on structures identified as viable for renewable energy installations. More specifically, the unit has been integral in the identification of funding, land, and public space for renewable energy installations in Abaco after Hurricane Dorian. The unit is also working with our international donors to identify funding opportunities for renewable energy investment and other climate change mitigation and adaptation activities. The following provides a brief overview of the progress of the projects over the last 6 months. First up, the project at the National Stadium, the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum Award for Best Distributed Generation Project, and that was completed in 2019. That project actually won that award, so we're very proud of it. The unit has been working to secure parts for the dysfunctional EV fast charging station. The part was received in July 2020, and of course we are liaising with BPL to have that part replaced and the charger restored. Several meetings were held with BPL and the NSA to bring the matter to a lease agreement between the two entities to a close. Little progress, however, has been made. We continue to meet virtually. Turning now to the Anatole Rogers High School. This won the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum's Best Energy Efficiency Project Award. It was completed in December 2019. The unit has ongoing communication with the school to reschedule, because we had to reschedule an opening ceremony. In terms of the TG Glover Primary School, which is our next targeted renewable energy installation, we estimate the time for completion to be September 2021. The unit had completed the evaluation of all tenders to this project in March 2020. However, as a result of the shutdown and the impact of the shutdown on the Italian government, who was the sponsoring agency, the project financier, in other words, it was unclear as to whether funds were still available to see the project to completion. Several requests have been made for an update to the Italian government through the Bahamas' mission in New York, as well as the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. Until this time, no firm response on the status of this project has been clearly outlined or communicated to us. In light of this, the unit has negotiated to have this project form a part of the projects which are funded using other sources. Turning my attention now to the Office of the Prime Minister, which is where I'm at now. In June, the unit began contract negotiations with a preferred bidder, B&H Construction out of Grand Bahama. After several meetings with the contractor, a previously executed contract was edited and shared with the Office of the Attorney General for review and further editing. This contract received the approval of the Office of the Attorney General in September 2020, just this month, and is now ready for execution. Construction will commence shortly after execution. Turning our attention now to the unit's activities in relation to the Green Climate Fund. In April 2020, the unit worked with the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture to submit a regional readiness proposal to the Green Climate Fund that will increase climate resiliency in the agricultural sector of all participating countries. The Bahamas committed $250,000 of our annual readiness allocation to this project, in partnership with the IICA. The unit is working with the Climate Technology Center Network and, of course, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization to complete a grid stability study of the electrical grid in New Providence. And that will be used to determine the renewable energy capacity and need for grid expansion and infrastructural improvements to our grid. The unit is conducting an assessment along with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center of agencies, both government and non-government, to determine their capacity to function as an accredited entity to the Green Climate Fund. The unit is working to increase the private sector engagement in the Bahamas to the Green Climate Fund through a private sector education and awareness campaign. The unit worked with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center and, of course, Blue Orchid Advertising to create educational material for public discourse on climate change. The result? A short film on the impacts of climate change in the Bahamas. That was completed in August of this year. The unit is currently planning the debut of this film, which we look forward to. The unit also worked with the Water and Sewage Corporation to submit a multi-million-dollar proposal to the Green Climate Fund for building resilience to climate change in the water sector. This project has made it successfully through the first round of funding. And of course, approvals, well, the first round of funding approvals it's made it through and is expected to be fully approved by the end of this year. The unit will continue its engagement with the Green Climate Fund through the development of a Climate Smart Country program, which will outline in-country projects and investments focused on climate change, mitigation, and adaptation within the context of a small island developing state, such as our country. Building on the success achieved at the New Providence Sanitary Landfill, we sought for the first time in the history of our country to develop environmental legislation. Chief among them was the creation of a Ministry of Environment and the establishment of a government agency in law to protect the environment, namely the creation of the Department of Environment, Planning and Protection, which we refer to as the DEPP. And the DEPP continued to advance projects during the pandemic, and I am happy to report to the nation on the status of the same. First up, some of the United Nations projects. And this one is a very exciting one, certainly in my view, and that's the Access and Benefit Sharing Project, or as we refer to within the ministry or within the DEPP as the ABS project. The Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, or as the executing agency of the Access and Benefit Sharing Project in the Bahamas, along with other agencies who are members of the Project Steering Committee, well, they endeavored to craft and pass an ABS policy framework, and that is currently under review by members of the ABS legal team. Upon completion, this act will be presented in the House of Assembly and debated. The act seeks to allow the government and ultimately the people to be compensated for the genetic resources of our country. What happens now is when scientific breakthroughs are made using our genetic resources, we don't share in the benefit, and we aim to stop that from happening. The DEPP is in partnership with the Antiquities, Monuments, and Museums Corporation with regard to the implementation of the ABS Pilot 2, entitled Adjusted Partnerships with Ex Situ Collections, Take Up ABS Policies. This pilot aims at entering into partnerships with selected ex situ institutions under the developed Access Benefit Sharing regulations, thus assuring that the utilizations will comply with legal requirements of the Bahamas. The details of these policies will be developed through a dialogue with ex situ collectors. Now, there are some key timelines that I'd like to go over very quickly. First, there is an 18-month moratorium on the export of genetic resources. This ends in November 2020. The Access Benefit Sharing Act is presently being drafted and getting ready for tabling in November 2020. So we want those two dates to coincide so we can have a seamless transition. Online permitting systems will be launched for all biological permits. Requirements for the country's accession to the Nagoya Protocol is now being prepared. The economic value of this project, approximately $4 million, US dollars that is, and employs up to 4 Bahamian companies, including 3 staff. In relation to climate change, well, the DEPP, Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, is leading the execution of a series of national climate change projects, including the 3rd National Communication, Initial Biennial Update Report, and the updating of the nationally determined contributions, which will be submitted to the United Nations Climate Change Convention between 2021 and 2022. Collectively, the department will receive a little over $1 million in grant funding to complete these UN projects or reports. The economic value of this particular project, and I repeat, is a little over $1 million, employing 2 persons or 1 company or individual. In terms of capacity building for increased transparency in greenhouse gas quantifying and institutionalization and climate mitigation and adaptation. That's quite a heading. Since the engagement of the national consultant in September, a national stakeholder workshop was conducted by the team. The national consultant supported the review of workshop materials, contacting stakeholders, and facilitation of the inception workshop. The next steps will involve the preparation summary of workshop outcomes, package of inputs for baseline analysis, a validation workshop, and final stakeholder reports, all to be completed by the 4th quarter of 2020. Total funding for this project is $1.5 million. The economic value of is $1.1 million, generating employment for up to 9 individuals. The DEPP in relation to the Green Climate Fund and the health proposal. The Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, in partnership with the Ministry of Health, has bridged the gap between health and climate issues by developing a robust Green Climate Fund proposal, which is currently under review by the Green Climate Fund Secretariat. This proposal, if approved in its entirety, will be led by the Ministry of Health and supported by the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. We hope that this synergy of the 2 agencies will prove very useful. And over the course of an 18-month period, we anticipate investments into the climate-resilient health systems. The economic value, $749,500. Employment prospects, up to 17 individuals. The Climate Promise NDC review and supporting work plan construction and negotiations with the United Nations Development Program on the Nationally Determined Contributions Climate Promise Project. Well, this will help to inject funding into the University of the Bahamas to support the updating of our climate change mitigation and adaptation commitments to the United Nations. This is a $175,000 project, can employ a firm with up to 4 individuals. Turning my attention now to PAHO, World Health Organization, and the European Union grant. Since March of 2020, the national consultants supported the development of a project proposal, and the purpose of that was to seek funding and technical support from PAHO, WHO, to produce the country's first climate change and health country profile, health national adaptation plan, and climate change and health vulnerability and adaptation assessment. These technical products will place the Bahamas in a better position to leverage funding for climate projects. The application for this funding is expected to open in the 4th quarter of 2020. and the Bahamas is well placed for access to this grant given the challenges surrounding Hurricane Dorian. Value, 7 million euros. So this is a very significant project. Turning now to the IWECO project status and the report on East End Grand Bahama. The Implementing Land, Water, and Ecosystem Management, IWECO project, held a pre-launch meeting in Grand Bahama with relevant stakeholders on March 6, 2020, to gather feedback on the project's relevance given the environment post-Hurricane Dorian. Following positive feedback, the process of officially engaging stakeholders occurred, resulting in the solidification of the Project Steering Committee and 2 subcommittees, the Integrated Natural Resources Committee and, of course, the Utilities Committee. 6 consultancy positions were advertised between May and June 2020, of which the process of consultancy engagement is still underway, but it's coming to a close. Due to COVID-19, there have been some slight delays as it relates to stakeholder engagement. However, notwithstanding the planning of the IWECO project inception workshop is currently taking place, as the workshop is proposed for the 30th of September. Following this, all project activities will commence. Employment and training outputs from this particular project, well, ecotourism training program to reach a minimum of 50 persons in that community. A minimum of 5% of trained East Grand Bahama residents to be employed in ecotourism sectors as employees or entrepreneurs. A minimum of 10% East Grand Bahama fishermen to be engaged in Marine Stewardship Council certification process for spiny lobster. A minimum of 10 trained Bahamian college students, natural resource managers, and scientists for ecosystem monitoring and evaluation. Economic value of this project to East End Grand Bahama, $1.7 million. And this is a very significant project to the East End community, and we certainly wish them luck. Turning my attention now to the Pine Island project, the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, DEPP, is the executing agency for the Bahamas' Pine Island project, Forest Mangrove Innovation and Integration, Grand Bahama, New Providence, Abaco, and Andros project. DEPP, along with project partners, which are the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation, BAIC, the Forestry Unit, the Department of Physical Planning, and of course, the Bahamas Development Bank, Creative Nassau, and other institutions, well, they're working to fulfill all the deliverables outlined for the project. Project activity has been significantly impacted due to, of course, Hurricane Dorian and the travel restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nevertheless, the project has continued to make progress, and this project aims to build on recent advancements in the forestry sector by integrating biodiversity values, ecosystem services values, and precepts of sustainable forest management and land use into enhanced land use planning in the Bahamas. Presently, the project has addressed a number of environmental priorities through the following components. BAIC, along with other project partners, have made significant progress in the areas of resource assessments, sample collection, and the development of educational materials and the promotion of sustainable livelihood management. These activities are directly aimed at the indigenous craft industry on Andros and Grand Bahama. Additionally, I'm proud to report a cascarilla nursery has been established on Acklands for the cultivation and collection of cascarilla oil in Acklands and Crooked Island. 2 cooperatives have been formed as a direct result of the project works, and it's on both islands respectively. The Forestry Unit is in the process of drafting a legal framework to repeal and replace the Forestry Act of 2010. The new act will allow for legal protections of forested areas and a forest reserve. DEPP is drafting 2 sub-national plans for Andros and New Providence, which integrates sustainable principles into national land use planning through the development of land use and sustainable forest management plans. We anticipate that this project will employ 4 of our staff members. When I turn now to the Convention on Biological Diversity, the DEPP, well, the Biosafety Clearinghouse Project and the CBD reporting under the Convention on Biodiversity. The DEPP is managing the implementation of the Biosafety Clearinghouse 3 project on capacity building, for which a grant in the amount of $15,000 was received for this activity. DEPP is the executing agency for the development of the 5th National Report on Biodiversity and the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, for which the Bahamas was awarded $200,000, and this has to be completed by December 2020. This again is a $215,000 project and is expected to employ 3 individuals. The 6th National Report to the Convention on Biodiversity. The 6th National Report to the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity aims to report on the country's advancement towards national and international biodiversity goals and commitments. The final has been reviewed, and the next step include tabling the 6th National Report to Parliament for approval before its submission to the Convention on Biological Diversity. This is expected to employ 2 local consultants, and it's valued at $100,000 US. Meeting the Challenge of 2020 in the Bahamas, GEF 2020. This is another project. The Meeting the Challenge of 2020 in the Bahamas builds upon the country's commitment to the 2013 Caribbean Challenge Initiative. The project will enhance protected area management effectiveness, train protected area managers, bolster community ownership and involvement with protected areas, develop a national biodiversity information database, and promote more environmentally friendly agricultural practices. This is a $6,243,000 US project and can employ up to 5 local companies or 3 individual consultants. Turning now to regional and special projects. The European Union and CARIFORUM, European Union Global Climate Change Alliance. The department, in partnership with the Met Office, well, they're working together and they're working collaboratively to establish within the Bahamas the 12 million euro coral monitoring stations, coral reef early warning systems, and automatic weather stations for climate change. The Bahamas' ability to engage in the activity of this project, thus ensuring that it has access to the stations, is presently before myself for tabling or presentation to Cabinet. The economic value of this is 12 million euros. But that is a very exciting and interesting project. I'm turning now to the recent case of cruise ship damage as a result of them anchoring in the Bahamas. The Department of Environmental Planning and Protection visited the site, and we submitted a report to the ministry. Further investigations are underway. The Department of Environmental Planning and Protection also participated, along with the Department of Environmental Health Services and the Bahamas National Trust, on the 2-month monitoring and capture of the cane toads, which are an invasive species primarily found in the western section or the western district of New Providence. In relation to the Bahamas Petroleum Company, all environmental clearances were issued, and the proposed exploratory well that was scheduled for this year has been moved to the first quarter of 2021. Now, there are a number of foreign direct projects that are being reviewed, foreign direct investment projects and local projects that are being reviewed by the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. It is important to note that notwithstanding our economic challenges, we seek to have and find harmony and balance between the need to develop our economy and the need for us to maintain what we have. And so as such, we advise members of the public, and of course the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection will go on an even more aggressive program. And then what they're seeking to do is to appraise everyone and familiarize everyone with the new environmental impact assessment regulations. Projects that are under consideration are located throughout the length and breadth of the Bahamas. There's some on New Providence, of course, there's some in Eleuthera, there's some in the Exumas. One of the things, thank you. One of the things that we have to admit is that the pandemic has changed our lives in ways that we could have never have imagined. And of course, it will continue to change our lives. As a country, we've faced challenges before. Our forebears had their challenges and they faced it with bravery and by tackling the hard problems through work and through unity. And this is what will get us through this particular challenge that we face. So I encourage all of us, let us work together, let us move forward, and of course, God bless you, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Minister Ferreira. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll now move to the question and answer period. The first question, we invite Ms. Jementa Swain from ZNS Bahamas, Nassau, to ask the first question, please.
Good afternoon, Bahamas. Good afternoon, Minister. It's Jementa Swain. And my first question for the Minister is, you mentioned a few housing subdivision projects, the one in Carmichael, plans for Spring City, and foreseeable duplex project. Are you confident that you are likely to meet the plans to develop new housing subdivisions to meet demand for the affordable housing as outlined in your manifesto in light of the expenses that we are seeing associated with COVID-19?
I'll invite the Minister to come forward, please, to comment on the question.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we're very confident. This is based on the fact that we've had success in relation to Sunset Close extension and, of course, what we did in Fox Hill. So building on that success, we continue to plow forward because we understand that the economy will eventually reopen. People are going to need homes. People will eventually get back to work. And we want to be prepared and ready to have a full suite of housing and housing options available to the general public.
Sir, for my second question, you mentioned that the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation had implemented a 6-month deferral program. Can you say how many persons were affected or assisted during that time? And is there any plans to extend that program? You mentioned that persons are being contacted.
Okay, Minister.
No, I can't give you the exact number at this time, but you can always contact me at a later date, and I will get that information to you.
The next question goes to Ms. Gillian Gray of Our News. You'll have 2 questions, Ms. Gray.
Thank you. My first question is for the Minister. I know that the housing program has been going on for a while. Can you say how many people have taken advantage of the housing initiative, as well as how many lots are prepared at present?
Minister.
The first two subdivisions are have been completely sold out. So that's 40 lots. So that's 40 Bahamian families who otherwise would not have homes, have them. In terms of what's happening at Carmichael Village, as I said in my presentation, that we intend to open that in phases. The first phase will be about 101, 107 service lots that we'll develop. And of course, we will have plans that the members of the public can avail themselves or to at the Department of Housing. And they can also use their own plans. But we're very confident that we're going to move forward with this. I have the support of all my colleagues. This is an important plank. Right? Every single human being needs some place to stay, some place to live. This is an important plank of what makes us human. And we intend to press forward, press on, and get the job done.
And for my second question, can you give an update on the Equinor oil spill in Grand Bahama, please? Just give us a little bit more information as to what's transpired.
Yes, they continue they're on the restoration and resuscitation of the forestry area now. Our continuous monitoring of the groundwater resources there revealed that there has been no groundwater contamination. Our officers from the Department of Environmental Health Services, located both in Freeport, Grand Bahama, and in New Providence, continue to monitor the situation. They're making attempts at this point to deal with the owners of the quarry to resolve that situation. But the major thrust of their recovery efforts at this phase is restoration and remediation of the forest area.
Okay, thank you. The next set of questions would go to Mr. Matthew Moxie of Eyewitness News. Mr. Moxie.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My question is for the minister. Seeing as though the OBAN president has reportedly resigned, are we still moving forward with this project? And essentially, what is the update on OBAN?
Yes, there's a cabinet select committee that has been appointed to deal with that, and they would be much better suited to answer that question than I would.
Okay, my second question would be, where are we now with the environmental impact assessment with Disney's Lighthouse Point project? Why has it not been made public as yet?
I'm going to invite the director from the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection to give you an update on that.
Good afternoon, Bahamas. With respect to the Disney's EIA process, right now we are in the process of finalizing the document because the document came about during the passage of the act with regards to the regulations. And once that document is completed, it would be put online for the public to review and to give comment onto. Keep in mind that the placement of the document online does not indicate a finalization of the document, but it does conclude a discussion between the technical persons of Disney and ourselves to make sure that we have captured all the issues. But of course, we do need the input from the public to make sure that that is a complete process and a conclosure of the entire concerns from the Bahamian people. So you will see that, I suspect, within a matter of weeks as that whole entire discussionary process is coming to a close.
Mr. Tyler Simonet, JCN News.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Miss Simonet, sorry. Good afternoon to the ministry and to all who are listening. As for my first question, last week the Royal Bahamas Defense Force apprehended 83 Dominican poachers who were caught with quite a significant amount of seafood on their vessels. Is the effects of overfishing and poaching on the environment a large concern for the ministry at this time? And if so, what's being done to mitigate that?
Ms. Newbold. The director of the DEPP, Mrs. Rochelle Newbold, will comment on that.
All resources within the Bahamas are of critical importance to this department, be it plant or animal. With respect to the fisheries resources, we work jointly with the Department of Marine Resources, who has the legal mandate in terms of managing our fisheries resources, to ensure that they are well equipped with all the information and the data sets that they need. Now, one thing we know in the Bahamas is that we have to deal a lot with this deficiency in the data that we have. And it is of concern to us that when we do attempt to get data from individuals, they are a little reluctant to tell you exactly what it is their catch numbers are. But without knowing what the catch numbers are for Bahamians, it would be hard to determine what is the total resources of the fisheries product that is out there. So two things I would want to say in response to your question. One, we as a people need to work together so that we can have the data, so that we can better manage, so that when you ask the question as to whether it's having an impact, honestly, we are unsure because we don't know what our full complement in terms of the resources is. But like I said, along with the Department of Marine Resources, we're working to better get an understanding of that. And with the passage of the new laws, as Ms. Minister says, it does give us the legal mandate and the power to now act in the manner in which we all think and understand we should be doing as a government with respect to the management of our resource.
Okay, the second question from Ms. Simonet, please.
Yes, thank you for that response. During his speech, the minister did speak about the BMC's 6-month loan deferral program that was implemented at the start of the pandemic. My colleague, Ms. Swain, actually just asked about it, but I don't believe this part of her question was answered. Will the BMC consider extending that program at all if they find that people are still unable to meet their mortgage payments, even if it's on a case-by-case basis? Are they planning on extending it?
Okay, the minister will respond.
Yes, the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation is perhaps the most flexible lending institution in the Bahamas. And the reason why I say that is that our objective is to get people in homes by way of secured financing. So the short answer to it is yes, that if we find that the need is there, that this is something that we would consider, even on a case-by-case basis or on block, as what happened in the first instance. But the short answer to it is yes, and the reason why it's important is as we open up the economy, we recognize that home construction and construction in general is going to be pivotal in terms of providing employment and creating hope and people getting their lives back to normal. You know, they've endured so much. So we will be there for them every step of the way, showing the kind of compassion that they deserve.
Ms. Tanya Cartwright will get the next two questions, please.
Yes. My question is on the sanitization companies. Are these legitimate companies like Frank Hanna and those sort of cleaning companies? Or are these little contracts given out like the cleaning of the roadsides or the hedging of schools and that sort of stuff? I want to know the nature of these companies that are sanitizing the buildings due to COVID.
I will invite the Director of the Department of Environmental Health Services, Ms. Melanie Mckenzie, to respond. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to say that in Minister's speech, he actually spoke to the fact that the DHS was conducting sanitization of government buildings. The other companies who were involved in sanitization were those companies with business licenses. Those persons are contracted privately, and there were a number of those companies that were engaged, who had asked the DHS to conduct training for them. That was done. So yes, these are legitimate companies, privately run, engaged by private citizens. For the government buildings, the government has been taking care of it. Thank you.
Okay, second question, Ms. Cartwright.
Yes, my second question is on our wetlands. I've noticed, the last thing I've noticed, Lakeshore Drive in Westridge currently has some beautiful little ponds, natural stuff in the back there. They're being filled in now for, I'm assuming, construction of buildings. Are we still monitoring these wetlands, et cetera? There are photos of the area and everything that I'm talking about. So I just want to know, what are we doing in terms of our wetlands, and you know, are we filling them all in for construction, or what? Who's monitoring them, and is there still a policy in place for them?
Director Newbold.
Thank you. Yes, wetlands, there has always been a wetland policy in place. What we have lacked is the regulations under which we can protect them. Minister spoke about the new acts that are coming into play for the forestry unit, and under those acts, mangroves are actually going to be declared protected tree species. So that's going to help a lot with when people seek to remove or damage mangroves. As it relates to the infilling of wetlands for development, in full transparency, what we have to consider is the act that was passed is only 9 months old. And under that act, we now have the legal ability to control or to limit or to totally eliminate any consideration of constructions within the wetlands. But prior to that act, permits may have been issued for areas that were considered low-lying, where there wasn't a requirement for an EIA to be undertaken, therefore identifying the area as a wetland or as a stormwater management area, because that's what wetlands that are landlocked could do, and no consideration may have been given to the ecosystem benefits that they would have accrued to the surrounding neighborhood, because you talk about how beautiful it was. But now with the passage of the act, we do have the authority and the legal power to prevent, to even request that those areas that may have been illegally infilled be returned to their natural state. So the passage of this act, as Minister said, is truly a monumental and historical point in our history as we seek to move forward 43 years later as a country.
Mr. Sloan Smith of Eyewitness Digital is next question.
Hi, Miss Sloan Smith.
Miss Sloan, I beg your pardon. It's getting mixed up
No
here.
problem.
Thank you.
So my first question, the minister, is for the minister. He would have noted during his speech that some 3,000 plastic items have been collected from the government, from those companies to date, and that they've been dealt with. Minister, are you able to speak with how those items have been dealt with or are being dealt with? And I guess while we're on the topic, can you speak to what level of enforcement is currently happening with the plastic bans to ensure that businesses aren't continuing to use those products?
Okay, we'll invite Dr. Rihanna Neely to respond to the question, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah. The Ministry oversaw the collection of all of these items in July when the plastic ban came into full effect. And those items right now, we're working with a company outside of the country to have them upcycled. So those items will be transferred and transformed into things like outdoor furniture, et cetera, for uses in different ways other than their single-use items use. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I don't think she.
Okay, you have another question, a part of the question, Ms. Smith?
Yes, sir. My second question is actually relative to whether the government has seen any impact from Hurricane Dorian, environmental impact, and whether any environmental impact assessment has been ongoing to see whether or not we've seen any changes in Grand Bahama and Abaco. And if I could note, she didn't answer the second part of the question, which had to do with enforcement of the plastics ban.
Okay, Dr. Neely, would you wish to respond to that? And then we'll get on to the second question.
I do apologize. So in response to the second part of your question, there are officers, environmental and environmental health officers, that have been equipped with our form of notice books, and you will see them going around the country issuing notices to companies that are found with plastic bags or any of the banned items, and giving them a period of time to become in compliance. We have started that work, and that work will continue until we find that all stores, all businesses have been in compliance with the legislation.
Okay, your second question, Ms. Smith, can you repeat it, please?
The second question was related to whether or not any EIA has been done as it relates to the impact of Grand Bahama and Abaco from Dorian. Thank you.
We'll invite the director of the DEPP to respond.
As it relates to environmental assessments associated with the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, there were several that were undertaken. The Forestry unit by Director Christopher Russell, they undertook assessments, and this is why we were able to identify the need for the salvaging activities in Grand Bahama and Abaco. And with respect to Grand Bahama in particular, assessments were undertaken for the East End Grand Bahama. That's why the IW Echo project is also going forward in the way that it has been designed, because it will be bringing benefit to the reestablishment of the creek systems there. Under the Department of Environmental Health Services, environmental assessments were undertaken in Abaco and Grand Bahama relative to the waste and any secondary hazardous and pollution issues that occurred due to overturned tanks and waste disposals that were in bushes and all sorts of other things that came up with storm surges and stuff like that. So there is a baseline set of information that we're working from and we're moving forward with in terms of trying to get those two islands back into full recovery mode and moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Director. The next question goes to Shamako Lightburn of the Blaze FM.
Good afternoon, it's Marco Lightborn here from the Blaze 98.3 FM in Exuma. Earlier this year, discoveries were made that certain cruise lines were discharging operational waste in our waters. Norwegian Cruise Line was one such vessel that voluntarily reported that they did do so. With the hopeful return of cruise vessels to the country in the future, how do we monitor and enforce that these vessels adhere to our environmental laws moving forward?
Mrs. Newbold.
Thank you for that. Yes, the whole issue of the cruise industry, not just for the Bahamas, but even globally, is one of a major concern when it comes to environmental matters. With the passage of the new law, and that's where we always have to stand, with where there's no law, there's no sin. So we have to use the law as a framework in which we could be able to undertake actions or activities against people who break the laws. With respect to the pollutions that the cruise lines have already committed, we are looking into whether or not how we can seek to address the damage that has been previously done. But there again, I come back to the issue of having the data. You know, we have to know what was done. We need to know what the impacts associated with them were. But notwithstanding that, my department is working feverishly to try to bring to the table pollution regulations that would help us to take immediate action in the event that cruise lines or locals, because the law is not a respecter of persons, everybody will be under it. We would have to act within a transparent working mechanism when it comes to dealing with pollutions in the marine environment and the prevention of pollution in the marine environment.
I'd like to add something to that very briefly. We've referenced quite a bit during this press conference the fact that we now have a Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. We have an Environmental Planning and Protection Act. The reason why this is so landmark is because up until this point, there was no legislative framework. There was no legal recourse. So what the director is alluding to is that we have a basic framework upon which we can build. Now, the cruise ships, they are our industry partners. But of course, we expect to serve a certain level of responsibility, a certain level of environmental ethic and conduct, as in any mutual beneficial relationship. We are and we will continue to work on regulations to make the Environmental Planning and Protection Act even stronger, because it has the capacity to speak to every single element that the public expects, and that is of critical importance for managing our environment moving forward into the 21st century. So this is actually, what we're all witnessing now is the beginning of a new era in terms of the actual regulation by law of environmental best practices.
Okay, Mr. Lightburn, your second question.
And thank you so much for that response. My second question is in regards to housing. There are several government-owned buildings that have been neglected on family islands for some reason or other. For example, abandoned teachers' residence. Does the ministry have plans to consider restoring any of these, particularly the ones that are seemingly structurally sound? They do have the potential to be used as the government sees fit, whether that is as quarantine centers or housing for government workers.
Okay, I'll invite the CHO, the Chief Housing Officer, Mr. France Williams, to respond to your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In respect to those abandoned homes that were there for teachers, they do not fall under the Department of Housing. I believe they will be underneath the Ministry of Education. But we do have plans at the Department of Housing on constructing new subdivisions in various family islands. And Exuma is one of them. We are looking to find properties so that we can develop there. So I would say in the near future, you would see something from the Department of Housing. Thank you.
Thank you, CHO. Ms. Karen Bain of Global 99.5 FM, your question, please, your first question.
Hello and good afternoon. Regarding offshore drilling, earlier during the minister's term in office, he met with 9 of the country's top environmentalists regarding offshore drilling. They were told then that no offshore drilling will take place. However, to date, 1 request for offshore drilling has been approved by the government, and that's off of the island of Andros. Why the change of heart by the government regarding their stance?
I think I will invite the Minister to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we did meet, and we did say that there would be no new licenses issued. I mean, that was the crux of the meeting. But this isn't a new license. This is a continuation of an existing license. And we were advised by our attorneys, the Office of the Attorney General, that this arrangement had to be honored.
Okay, Ms. Bain, your second question.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. My second question, we've had tremendous amount of rainfall lately. What is the Ministry of Environment doing to safeguard against any mosquito borne illnesses during this pandemic?
I have the Director of DHS who can answer that question. I'm sure she's very able to do so. Thank you, Director.
Good day once again. The department has been carrying out a larviciding program in many of the family islands and also in New Providence. It is a normal process, and particularly more important in this time when we're dealing with another health issue. That program is continuing. Lots of people really believe that the fogging activity, the ground fogging, is the more important activity, but it is not. It is the larviciding, because it's the larviciding that prevents the growth, the maturity of the mosquito. So we're focusing on the larviciding, but we're not neglecting the ground fogging.
Thank you, Director Mckenzie. That is one of the critical functions that had to continue during the lockdown and during the pandemic. And thank you, Director, for your answer and for all the work that your staff have done in that regard. The next question goes to Ms. Jasper Ward of the National Guardian.
Good afternoon. My first question, a few weeks ago, the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources indicated that there was a significant damage to marine assets as a result of the anchoring of cruise ships near the Berry Islands. It said that it was working with the Ministry of Environment to complete a comprehensive assessment into that matter. Can you please provide an update on that assessment, Minister Ferreira?
I'm going to invite the Director of the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. They were intimately involved in the initial review, to give you an update.
Hi. Yes, with respect to the the alarm that was raised by the fishermen from Berry Islands, we did indeed go out to the site with the assistance of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and with the support of the Port Department and the Department of Marine Resources. During that time, we were able to identify that there was legitimacy to the concerns that were raised by the fishermen, and the Minister of Agriculture did make a national statement relative to it. The report that was submitted to the ministry and onwards to the cabinet identifies a series of activities that are to be undertaken in order to address this issue and to make sure that it does not reoccur. One of the things, again, we come back to the law, is making sure that we have the foundation on which to stand about the things that we wish to put in place. And so we await the final review from the cabinet with regards to how and what actions we can take at this time based on the proposal that was put forward.
Just a follow-up, not my second question. Can you say how long before that before we can hear an answer from the cabinet?
No, I can't say how long it will be before we can hear an answer from cabinet.
Second question for the minister. Can I get a timeline on that lot development project for Spring City and projected costs?
Okay, I'll invite the CHO, Ms. LaFrance Williams, to respond to the question.
Good day again. Can you repeat the question for me, please? Hello?
Hey, sorry, they had to unmute me. The question was, can I get a timeline for how long the development of the 21 townhouses, the lots in Spring City will take, and an estimated cost?
Well, currently, Spring City, the land survey is on the ground now, so the property is being surveyed out, resurveyed out. We estimate the infrastructure of that to be completed hopefully by the end of the year. It's a small development. However, as far as the construction of the homes, that is going to take some time. We still haven't entered into the process yet of tendering out those documents as far as construction is concerned. We have designed the townhouses, but that is a process in the making. But the infrastructure part of it should be completed by the end of the year. Oh, sorry. Estimated costs. Now, the estimated costs for, you're talking in totality of the entire project or just the stage where we are at now, which is the infrastructure of the subdivision? Hello? Oh. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the intervention by the Minister of the Environment and Housing on the COVID-19 initiatives at the Ministry. I want to thank him for his presentation. I thank the staff, all of the directors and the staff, all the valuable work they've done. We all take a lot of the services for granted, but those were a lot of the services were critical functions that had to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank BIS for hosting us for this presentation, and good afternoon to you.